If you've been watching these videos, you know that sometimes I'm looking at some of Michy's proverbs in his book Opening Concepts and saying that they're not quite satisfactory. And in fairness to Michy, he does point out that they're proverbs, they're not hard and fast rules, they're just things to think about. And they are to be taken as that, just things to principles to bear in mind. However, when we get to Proverb 13, that question mark I've put at the end of the proverb there, making a point is better than hitting loose, question mark, is from me, because it's far and away the most unsatisfactory. Even Michy himself raises doubts about it. This idea of making a point is better than hitting loose. But let me show you what he means. And I'm going to split this into two videos, so this is very much part one of that. But he gives this example here where we rolled a 6 and a 4. We're white as usual, bearing into the bottom right. And I think we must have started with, was it a 4-1? Our opponent started with a 5-4, and we're now in this position, and we've rolled a 6 and a 4. Really, the only thing you can do with the 6 here is to take our furthest rearmost checker up there on the top right, move them forward 6. But the question becomes then, what do you do with the 4? Because we can hit with the 4 and fight for the 5 point. It's definitely something we can try. Or we can put that back there, and we can make that point by bringing one. We can make our 9 point by bringing a checker down from the 13 point. And Michy's proverb is that, making a point is better than hitting loose. So we were looking in the last video about, weighing up proverbs. So Proverb 2 says make an outfield point. Proverb 1 says the most important is the 5 point, and 3 says fight for a good point. So you might think, well, look, I should hit with the in this situation. But Michy now comes in with Proverb 13 saying that making a point is better than hitting loose. So I said we've got the 6 moving forward there, that rather than hitting loose, which really just puts black back a little and leaves us several blots around the board, we're better off giving a long-term asset. The way I think of it is that when we've made that 9 point there, we've given ourselves a long-term asset that we can keep. Whereas when we hit loose, we might get the 5 points, but we might not. And that's why it's an error not to. Now, I'm going to just move on to the other proverb. Michy gives only 2 positions in his book, so this is the other position he gives. And again, it's a similar thing where with the 3 and the 2, we could hit with the 3. We could take one of the checkers on our 8 point down the bottom left there and hit the lone black checker on their 5 point with the 3, and then with the 2, probably push forward one of our back checkers is the best thing to do if you've hit with the 3. Or look at the top right there. We can make an anchor here, so we can take our furthest back checker with a 3 and then 2 with the next checker, and we've made ourselves a nice advanced anchor. And the question becomes, which is the right thing to do? And again, Michy would say, well, look, making the point is better than hitting loose, and for that reason, the best thing is the one at the back. However, I kind of feel Michy just picks situations that sort of work for his rule, and there's definitely, he says himself, there's an awful lot of exceptions to this proverb. And Paul McGreal, the great kind of father of backgammon theory, he actually warned Michy about this proverb, and he said there's just so many exceptions to this proverb that it becomes too much of a generalization. And in fairness to Michy, he puts this in the book. He says, Paul McGreal has warned me about this proverb. He says he doesn't agree with it. And I have to admit, the more I kind of looked at it, it just is too much of a generalization. And that's why, again, I've taken this proverb. I'm going to do 2 videos about it, because there's so much more to it than just a simple, bland, making a point is better than hitting loose. So for example, here's a situation where it's early in the game. Black has rolled a 5-4, and we've now rolled a 5-3. And, well, if we're making a point, we can make a point with the 5 and the 3. We can bring one in from our 8 point and we can cover it. We've made a point. But that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do from the start is to bring one down to the 13 onto the 8 point and keep it going one more, and to hit the 5 there. If you know your opening replies, that's kind of a well-known opening reply. We fight for that 5 point. So Michy's rule does not apply. And I was driving yesterday and was kind of thinking, I kept thinking of positions where, yeah, that's just Michy's wrong here. Michy's wrong here. If our opponent advances to our bar point and leaves a blot there, and we roll a 4 and a 2, rather than making our 4 point, we're better off hitting them. But I'm not going to show you every position. It's just as clear that the problem with this proverb is there's just so many exceptions. And here's an example. So I went looking, and I kind of went looking at other theorists, and what do they say about this? Now, first of all, I came across Bill Roberti. He has this new series of books, How to Play the Opening in Backgammon, and it's just a wonderful. It's so encyclopedic, and what Bill Roberti actually does is nearly point by point. He says, well, if you can make the 5 point or hit loose, what's best? Then he says, if you can make the 4 point, do you hit loose or do you something else? It's very, very thorough. And my target is that when I finish these, I want to look at the opening in backgammon. I've been saying that I'm going to, when I finish the Michy book, I'm going to move on to the Bill Roberti book. So I'm not going to kind of cover them there. And the other book that I found was Dirk Sheeman, and his book is just brilliant. It is so thorough. I absolutely love this book and the detail it goes into. And he has a whole chapter on whether hitting loose or making an outfield point, and he covers this in just so much more depth that, in fact, what I'm doing is I'm going to do 2 videos on this. I guess usually with Michy, I kind of think, well, this is a crappy little proverb. I won't spend time in it, and then I discover there's so much more out there. This video is going to look at what everyone else says, and then there's going to be a follow-up video just purely on Dirk Sheeman and what he recommended about this. So I won't talk about Dirk Sheeman now, but there were other articles I found, and one other area, the Gammon Press is also Bill Roberti. An article I found in the Gammon Press I thought was quite thorough, and they gave a very interesting position here where early in the game, and we're white as usual, usual format, and we rolled a 4 and a 2. And what's nice about this position, there's just so many good things you can do. So you can run your, if you look at the top right there, our furthest most back checker, we can move that to 4 and the 2 and cover our opponent's bar point and make a nice advanced anchor there. That's one option. We could also make another very good point in our home board, playing from the, if you look down the bottom left, and the 3 checkers on our 8 point, move one of them in with the 4 and cover it with the 2. Makes a good point. We could also make another good point with our 9 point, has a lone white checker on the bottom left quadrant there. We can come down with the 4, and then the best move with the 2 is actually just keep moving the checker on our 18 point forward to the 16 point. Or we can hit. We could hit with the 4, and again, advance from 18 to 16 is marginally the best move, but I have to admit, if I hit, I'd be coming 13 to 11 just to give me a better chance of covering that our blot on our 5 point. So we have to weigh up the options. And what the Gammon Press Bill Roberti article says is this: a few factors to bear in mind. It's this idea of the long-term asset. A permanent, strong asset trumps a lot of aggression and flexibility. So, tying in with Michy's idea of making a point is better than hitting loose, making a permanent, strong asset is a very good thing, and sometimes might be better than a lot of aggression. Secondly, they'd say that if you have if we can anchor on our opponent's bar point, it's the second best anchor we can have. It's not the golden anchor, but it's the second best. And thirdly, and this is an interesting one, once you split to your opponents, so if you play a 6 forward from the back and you've split to your opponent's bar point, we need to cover that as soon as possible. And those 3 reasons put together make it very clear that the right thing to do is to go from 24 to 18 here. So if you look at the top right quadrant, the best thing we can do, we can make a really good anchor by playing the 4 and the 2 and covering our opponent's bar point. Now we've got a good anchor. We've done that. We've fulfilled the objective of covering that point as soon as we possibly can. We do leave a blot, but we're going to leave a blot somewhere. But this way, it's the best position we can leave. Making our own 4 point, playing in from the 8 point and down from the 6 point, isn't a bad move, but it leaves just much more blots around. This play we only leave 1 blot, and that's why it's the preferred method. I found another article on Deluxe Backgammon that I thought was quite good, and they talk about just some factors to consider whether to make a point or hit loose. Now, have a look at these, but don't make these down as notes, because I said Dirk Sheeman is just so much more thorough than this. But what this article said is a few things to think about is, if we hit loose, what's our home board strength like? If we hit loose, could our opponent dance when we hit them? Also, what's our opponent's home board strength like? Because do we need to be safer? If we hit loose and we get hit back, are we going to be more likely to be stuck in the bar? Look at the position in the race. If we're ahead in the race, we don't need to be as risky, so we don't hit loose. We're much more careful. And also just look at the distribution of checkers around the board. if we're very vulnerable after we hit loose, we might need to take a more cautious play. And this article just gave the same position but two different roles. So we started off with what we must have done a 5-1, and we're white again as usual. 5-1, and we come down with the 5 and split at the back. And our opponent rolled a 6-3, and in response to our 5-1, they just took the back checker and ran it with the 6 and the 3. And now we've rolled a 3 and a 1, and there's two big possibilities here. We could hit with the 3, hit that checker, send them back, and the 1 is probably best brought forward to there because it gives us great diversity. In the next row, we've lots of good numbers, numbers that are 1 apart, 2 apart, 3 apart, all roll really well for us now. So that's possibly the advantage of rolling it, bringing it forward to there. We could do that, or, well, the obvious 3-1 opening move is to come down from our 8 and our 6. We're breaking stacks, unstacking the 6. We're making a really good, our golden point in our home board. And it's a case of, well, look, which is the best one to do? And in this situation, let's go back to the permanent long-term asset of having the 5 point is just worth more to us than sending black a little bit and really achieving nothing. So look at the two positions. We've got this one. Which would you prefer? Position where black is on the bar, but really we haven't done anything in our home board and haven't really achieved very much, or this one where we've made the best point in the game, the 5 point, and for that reason, this the 3-1 just making the 5 point is the best option. Not a huge blunder. It's only a 39 millipoint error to do the other move, but it's still early in the game. We need to have our principles right. But they then take that position, and instead of doing a 3 and a 1, they say, well, what happens if you roll a 3 and a 2? How would you? It's exactly the same setup, exactly position, except the only thing that's changed is instead of rolling a 1, we've rolled a 2 here. And we've options. So look at the top right in our home board. We can use the 3 and the 2 to make a nice advanced anchor. So we come out with the 3 and cover with the 2. But we don't need to do that. Our opponent is no threat to us at the minute. They've nothing in their home board. There's really no kind of risk to us. And for that reason, let's just go back there. The other option is to hit with the 3 and push forward, advance the checker at the back, gives us a chance of covering it and making the same advance of anchor in the next go. And the question is really, which is more important? And I suppose the answer is, while it's always useful to have an anchor, at this point in time, the black home board is relatively weak. And for that reason, they're very unlikely to, even if they were to come out off the bar, which is a wheel in the next go, 35 times out of 36, they're not going to be able to make a point in their home board without doublets. So for that reason, it's not critical to make an anchor. And that's why this is the right move. We're right to hit in this situation. The safer play is what's it down? It's right down. It's a 93 millipoint blunder, the fifth option. I had to actually put that into XG and play it because XG just didn't consider the idea of playing safe in this move. But let's look at this position here. We said we're no threat up in the top right in our opponent's home board, but let's give it a threat. So we're going to take 2 of black checkers on their midpoint. So if you're not sure of the terminology, look down the bottom left, the big file of 5 black checkers there on their midpoint. We're going to take 2 of those and put them instead on black's 5 point. And now look at the situation. They're starting to have a bit of a blitzing structure here. They've stacked on their 6 point. They're much more. They've 10 checkers in the zone. They're much more threatening to us now. And now that because black is threatening, really the best move is, yes, we should play the safe move and rather than hitting, give ourselves the long-term safety up in their opponent's own board. And that's carefully the right move. So at my summary of Michy's Proverb 13, making a point is better than hitting loose, is that it's just not true. But it does raise a really good question about whether we need to look at, well, what is the position calling for? Do I make a point? Do I need the long-term? Can I make a really good long-term asset, or should I push on? And so my next follow-up video is this. I'm going to look at what Dirk Schmidt said in so much more detail, and we'll look at that shortly.